Hello and welcome back to Setubal, where day two of the World Aquatics Open Water World Cup serves up a completely different challenge. The 10 kilometers is now behind us, but for many of the same athletes, it's time to go again. This is the 3 kilometer knockout. It is short, it's fast, and it's unforgiving. No feeds and no room to settle. Just 3 laps to find your position and fight for the win. I'm Will Rollo alongside World Aquatics commentator Alice Deering. And Alice, less than 24 hours after a brutal 10 kilometers, both mentally and physically tough, to reset and deliver today will be a tall challenge.
Hey, well, yeah, so good to be back with you. And for such an exciting race. And yes, to your point, this is brutal. They just completed a 10K yesterday in very tough conditions. We heard at the very end of the day from Marisha Johnson in her post-race interview that it got quite cold towards the end, so she wanted to pick up the pace to try and keep her body heat up, and that would have played some stress definitely on the women's field, but also looking to the men's as well with the relentless pace that Florian Wellbrock and Krzysztof Rosowski were setting throughout the race. So last night, preparations would have been, I hope, good. You know, it's difficult because there's a lot of fatigue in your body. There's certain things that you don't really want to have to do, but making sure you're getting enough sleep, recovery, getting the right foods in. So there'll be a lot of fatigue in all of the athletes' systems, but this is where open water swimmers thrive, and I'm sure they're going to set up for a very exciting race for us today.
That's it. And speaking of those athletes ready to go to the water, 36 of the men set to challenge the 3 kilometer knockout today. As per we have seen in this format, the first lap we'll see a 1500 meter lap followed by a 1000 meter lap and finally a 500 meter final. In the men's race, we'll see 2 heats of 18 going towards a semi-final of 20. So 8 in each heat to be knocked out. And Alice, as we get ready to meet Heat 2 and Heat 1, there are some big names once again swimming out of Heat 2. The likes of Logan Fontaine, Kaito Shimori, Marc-Antoine Olivier, Krzysztof Rosowski, just to name a few. And of course, Sasha Veli in there as well. It looks like Heat 2 is the tough one once more.
Yeah, this is always the interesting thing about these heats. It is random, but a lot of it is luck sometimes. So, you know, top 10 progressing from each heat. And yeah, you're right, Heat 2 is absolutely stacked. So for those swimmers that will potentially just looking to squeak through, it will be a lot more challenging to do that in Heat 2. But of course, in Heat 1, we still have two of the American swimmers with, three of the American swimmers with Ivan Puskovich. He had a great swim yesterday, was up at the front for some time as well. So, Mateus Milecki, the junior winner from last year as well. So it's one of those opportunities where if you're swimming in Heat 1, take that opportunity of having the majority of the big names in Heat 2. We have, of course, got David Bethlehem in Heat 1 as well. I'm expecting him to take this out very quickly. And if you're any of those swimmers in that heat, find that wake and get on him, and you can ride him through to hopefully what will be a fairly comfortable-ish, relatively fairly comfortable top 10.
So here we go, meeting some of our athletes in Heat 2 first and foremost. So they'll walk down and be held in some sort of waiting pen as they get ready for Heat 1 to start them off. And as you mentioned, Alice, the big name to watch in Heat 1 is David Bethlehem. He was simply sensational, did all but win it in Ibiza earlier this year, and one of the athletes really showed off his tactics early on, that being he really maximized his underwater, and I think it's certainly a new format to all open water swimming, but it's good to see that these athletes showing their dynamic skills from pool racing into the open water as well.
Yeah, you're so right. It just makes sense to kind of tie over some of those skills. I would say like 95% of open water swimmers have an illustrious pool career as well, and we learn those skills from whenever we start swimming, so like age 8, 9, 10, and don't really get the opportunity to race open water until you're in your early teens at the earliest. And for some people, it's 15, 16, 17. So you have all of those amazing skills, and you get into open water, and suddenly they're kind of irrelevant. So to see David Bethlehem in Ibiza get in and do a couple underwater fly kicks, it just makes sense, and it did pay dividends for him. So I'm expecting to see the same, and I'd also be really curious to see if anybody has picked up on it and is starting to copy it as we see this as a new event.
Yeah, and I think, we're going to see those reactions come thick and fast as we get ready for Singapore. This is just the fourth time we've seen it race sort of a very high international level. It made its debut last year at the Junior World Championships, where Saakashvili took part in that race and was almost triumphant. Well, triumphant all the way until the final 50 metres. We've seen a reaction automatically this year with one of the big names missing from today's field, Ollie Clement, taking out the win in Ibiza, as I mentioned, and then it was raced at the European Championships not too long ago, where that man on screen, Krzysztof Rosowski, was dominant. So all three races thus far have seen different tactics, and I'm sure we'll see another different tactic today. But just circling back to that, Alice, some big names not in the water today. The Germans leading that charge with the champion Ollie Clement from Ibiza and Florian Walbrock, arguably the hottest favourite going into Singapore for this event, choosing to head back to training overnight.
Yeah, it's a shame we're missing them. It's just a shame, but I'm kind of one of those things, holding my breath for Singapore and the opportunities that this is going to give our athletes when we get to that point. So today, I think the fact that we haven't got Ollie Clement in it means I think that's a great opportunity, opening it up for David Bethlehem to potentially take home this win. I mean, him and Ollie were so dominant in Ibiza with their speed, but Ollie Clement just managing to get over the top of him, especially in that 500 metres. So it'd be interesting to see if there's any super strong tactics coming out from the swimmers, whether we're going to want to see David Bethlehem trying to win every round again, similar to what him and Ollie were doing in Ibiza. So let's see. But of course, we've got Rosowski, Marc-Antoine Olivier, who took home the win in the 10K yesterday, and he has some fantastic speed on him. So whilst we are missing the German swimmers, we're still treated to a whole host of incredible world-class athletes.
Yeah, and I'm sure that each of these athletes would have their eyes on that victory as well, and trying to test out the what it's going to take to win in Singapore in just over a month's time. The reason that we saw Ollie Clement race the way that he did in Ibiza was that he was trying to get the outside line on each race, and that enabling him to get the clear water. The same reason as we saw David Bethlehem really maximize that underwater is to the point you were talking about before, Alice. You don't want to have anyone sitting on your hips and taking away your wake. I guess, why is that? Why don't you want people sitting alongside you?
Yeah, so with a races as short as a 1500, 1K, and then a 500, any energy which swimmers take by sitting on your hip is a lot to take from you, and it can just claw you back and get you dragged back. So with a swimmer like Ollie Clement, who has a very similar technique to Florian Walbrock, where they kind of skim across the top of the water, it's just so important that they do find their own water and allow their speed to fly. Whereas when you have a swimmer like Logan Fontaine or a Krzysztof Rosowski, where they have a much stronger and more powerful stroke, you do not want those athletes getting on your hip, because that's a very dangerous place for you going into the finish arc.
Just moments away from the start of Heat 1 here. This, of course, being the 1,500 metre lap ahead of a 3 kilometre knockout. Only 10 athletes will move through to the semi-final, in which order we will see very shortly. As you can see, the hand of the starter on the hooter, so not too far from the start. We'll keep in center of the screen will be David Bethlehem. He swims with only the bottoms of his race suit on. You can see him already assuming that starting position. This is very much a pool race. Dario Varani, one of the big Italians and one of the heavy favourites of this race, one spot across from the Hungarians. So we'll keep an eye on those as the flag goes up. The athletes are ready, and we are underway here in Setubal, this famous venue. Once again, you can see the underwater work of Bethlehem there, just pulling away, but he's dived straight into Dario Verani's water. That's an interesting move.
Oh wow, that was a good like 15 meters underwater. Do you know, I was expecting maybe like a couple fly kicks, but he really committed to it, and look what it's done for him.
Yes,
look at the space he's been able to create himself. It's so impressive, you know. And these are one of those things that I don't know whether other people will be watching, you know, the Australian men who aren't here at the moment, or the German men who aren't here at the moment. It'd be really interesting to see when we get to Singapore, is anybody else going to try and copy this? Because we haven't seen anybody in Heat 1 besides David Bethlehem use that tactic, and it has worked wonders for him.
Well, it is interesting, Alice, because I think what we're probably not paying respect to is just how good David Bethlehem is underwater. Like, to put a body length on, you not only have to be underwater, but you have to be really good at it, because the rest of the field is swimming pretty quick. So all respect to him in the work they're doing at training.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I keep saying this, but play to your strengths. So, sorry, just bring it back to my very short pool career at one point. I would often dive in and do like 2 fly kicks, because let's be real, I'm not going to get anything out of my underwater because I don't train it. So why am I pretending to go to 12.5 meters when I'd be better up and just getting up and getting into my stroke rhythm? When you're an athlete like David Bethlehem, who has obviously worked on this, is either very talented at it or worked very hard at it and able to get it to this level, why not use it and commit to it? But for the other athletes, it might be a waste of time for you. You might end up going underwater, doing like 10 meters underwater, coming up and realizing you're actually on everybody's hips, so you might as well have just swam with them initially anyway. So and you know, he's obviously letting his pool speed fly here, and he's created a good healthy gap.
Yeah, there was a very interesting turn there. I think that's Verani starting to move forward for Italy. It is, in fact, Verani starting to move forward, and he had to swim over the top of, I believe, Ivan Puskovic of the USA. Just got a little bit caught up on that turn there, but we'll keep an eye on Heat 1 as we go back to the start line. This is the star-studded heat of the 2. Heat 2 ready to race on the starters watch now. As you see, this is the start list. Logan Fontaine, as we mentioned, Marc-Antoine Olivier, the winner from yesterday, Krzysztof Rozowski, the European champion, just to name a few of these athletes. They're off and underway in Heat 2, just 3 minutes behind Heat 1. It will all come out in the mix of things as they make their way onto this 1,500-meter lap. And Alice, the interesting point is we see no one electing to go for the David Bethlehem model there. This is a much smaller field than what we saw in Ibiza. Only 18 athletes racing in each heat, so you really only have to be in the top half of the heat. Not trying to oversimplify it, but it does sort of play into the hands of those more experienced athletes that can rest a bit easier as opposed to a much deeper field.
Yeah, it's so true. As we saw in Ibiza, there were quite a few athletes that, because it's only the top 10 moving through, and it was a field of, I believe, 20 in each heat. They unfortunately lost out, you know, finishing in 11th or 12th position, no matter how close you are behind to 10th, unfortunately isn't going to cut it. So it does allow a little bit more wiggle room. You'll see some people, especially from Heat 1, favouring potentially some of those younger swimmers who maybe wouldn't have had that opportunity. So it was interesting that nobody else has done the David Bethlehem, but maybe that we're going to coin it a David Bethlehem at this point, doing that underwater, because you're so right about giving him the respect of the fact that he's just that good at it. He's clearly very good at underwater, so using that skill is going to work wonders for him.
I wonder what the reaction is going to be from the rest of the field once they notice what he's trying to do. Interesting point in the race here is we see the course on the swimmer on the inside of the course really going to have to work hard, or we skip back to Heat 1 here, and it still is David Bethlehem. You know what his start enables is he just puts himself at the front of the race, and now he controls the speed. And what we're seeing is he's holding a pace that makes it difficult for people to move forward. But he wouldn't be working that hard currently. This would be, if not 10k pace, a little bit slower than 10k pace for Bethlehem.
I was going to say, yeah, this is a pace that he can now play around with. Okay, I don't want to work too much harder than this. I don't need to do too much more work. I want to win the heat comfortably. But if I see anybody starting to approach on, my hip or my knee, or starting to move further at my feet, then I can start to put in a bit of a spurt and shut that door. And these are very, very aware swimmers. Whilst they're swimming forward, his head's down and he's going for it, he's going to be so aware of what's going on around him and not allow anybody to start creeping up on him. And we're just seeing Heat 2 here. It might be Logan Fontaine or Sasha Velli out in front, and then an Italian swimmer and another French swimmer. So so much playing around there. Yeah, and sorry, you've got Krzysztof Rosowski on the far left as well. So oh god, two lines for me. Heat 2 is going to be really difficult to qualify from. I know we've said that, but just looking at how it's already playing out, it's going to be like a challenge to really get your fingers on that pad in 10th position or higher.
Yeah. It's a very interesting point, Alice, that I do want to circle back to. But as you were just saying with regards to David leading hip on and the awareness that the athlete has, how are you aware as an athlete? Especially in Setubal, the water is quite dark on that far point of the course, but there are multiple ways to stay aware of where the pack is swimming whilst you're in action.
Absolutely, it's such a fantastic question. So, great example here. When you go around a turn buoy, I guess they haven't really turned. Are they turning? The angle's a bit trippy there.
That one is
so when you go around
500 meter lap.
Okay, sorry, my bad. So basically, when you go around a turn buoy and you take it on the 90-degree angle, it's a great opportunity for you to turn, in this case, and look to the left and see where the pack is. So that's one way of telling. You get some really valuable information at that point. Another way is just by kind of sensing that somebody's on your feet. So you can see the splash from Dario Varani behind David Bethlehem, who's leading. He will be able to feel the little splashes and the white water coming onto his feet and just in the general vicinity of his body. You can tell when there's a disturbance in the water. So he will know Varani is close behind him, but he will also know that it's only one swimmer behind him and it's not like a pack of 3 or 4 people.
Yeah.
So there's comfort in that. And then also the fact that you can just look back, but obviously looking back takes away from your speed and takes away from the direction that you're going in.
Yeah. I think the frequency of the feet touches as well often play into the psyche of the athlete that is leading. You see, it's like when you're driving a car, right? And the more you have to hit the brakes, the more congested that the race is, and that's what it's like when your feet are being touched. Is essentially someone hitting the brakes to say, all right, well, get a move on. But that's where, especially Bethlehem's just so well set up for these scenarios where he can sit at such a high tempo and move through the water quite quickly without exerting too much energy. And I guess we're seeing similar here with Rosowski leading the way in Heat 2. It is interesting, though, with only 18 athletes in this heat, the top 10 moving through to the semi-final. I will be interested to see exactly where and when athletes are placed, because there's no massive advantage to leading and winning the heat outside of what we saw from Ollie Clement in Ibiza. So I think there will be a reaction from the athletes at some point. If you are able to get it through to the semi-final almost in second or third gear, you'll be saving some crucial energy for that final.
Yeah, I was just about to say as well, the semi-final, qualifying from the semi-final to the final is going to be so challenging. You're going to have so many big names from Heat 2 qualifying, potentially some big names missing out, who knows. And there will be quite a few people who potentially sneak in because of the depth of the field is not as high as Ibiza, so names sneaking in, but the semi-final is going to be very rapid, of course, as you'd expect. Wanting it looks like David Bethlehem's looking to dominate, definitely dominating his heat, looking to dominate the semi-final and then the final. And Krzysztof Rosowski looks like he's taking the same tactic as well. So it must be the Hungarian thing of just being like, let's just commit to this, we trust our training. I think this is just an example of being able to trust your training and not having to get too tactical with um, especially with the 1500. So interesting to see how much the fatigue from yesterday does start to play into certain hands, into certain athletes, especially those who did get on the podium. But yeah, it's interesting to see how this all plays out. Well,
yeah. I mean, that's the best thing about the 3 kilometer knockout, right? Is it's a pretty much untapped event thus far, and even the nature of it will continue to be untapped as it continues to develop on the international scene. One thing that I just do want to point out, even though we're pretty far off from this being a reality yet, is if we have both David and Christoph win each heat, it means that they will be on the start line next to each other in the semi-final. And if anyone was going to be aware of Bethlehem's sort of prowess underwater, it would be Christoph Rozovsky. So just a quick shout out to that if it does come to fruition at the end of these heats.
I'd love to see that happen. Actually, I'd be so curious to see how Rozovsky responds, whether he dives in and just tries to follow Bethlehem's wake like that and then starts to climb up, or just accepts that he knows Bethlehem's going to want to win the semi-final and takes, okay, I'm quite happy with second, because they'll still be next to each other on the start line at that point. He kind of does what Dario Varane is doing at the moment, just kind of hogging Bethlehem's feet, not allowing him to go anywhere, but potentially just being content with that second place. And I'd really love to know who the French swimmers are, in what order. I think we see Marc-Antoine Olivier behind Christoph Rozovsky in that overhead shot, and I believe it will be either Sacha Verli or Logan Fontaine off to the side, kind of creating their own line. But we see them kind of come together now as well, but I'm confident that is Marc-Antoine Olivier, who is directly behind Rozovsky.
There you go, the inside from well, yeah, that's a great pickup of the stroke there, Alice. Well done to get Mark's stroke behind Christoph. One thing that I did want to sort of highlight in this opening lap, the 1500 meter lap is somewhat, obviously it's the longest distance, so by nature somewhat slower, and you have a bigger field competing in it, but the 650 meter long straights are specific to this heat. The 1000 meter lap, there'll be a 350 meter long straight, and then in the final it'll only be a 100 meter long straight. So the consistency being sort of the turning straights, which are 150 meters. What that does, and I'm sorry to spit a lot of sort of distances at everyone, but what it does is essentially makes the skills and tactics more important as each leg goes on. With only 150 meters from the start line to the turn, and then 100 meters in between the turn cans in the final, you're really going to put these test these skills in a pressure cooker, which is where this racing is so exciting, and that's where you see the sort of jostling for position. And Alice, that's why we saw in Ibiza the winner in both the men's and the women's race in the final was the leader at the first turn can. So we'll just keep an eye on that, because I think that's where it's going to be important to see how everyone finishes up in the semi-final.
So true, such a great point. The positioning in the final around getting around turn buoys, where's your line? You only have 100 meters to sort that out. That is not a lot of time at all. That's about, I mean, with my stroke rate and especially with the women, we're talking about, trying to do the maths real quick, probably about 60 strokes. Anywhere between 50 to 70 strokes, somewhere in that range. This is not a lot of time to start sorting out where you are in relation to the other 10 swimmers. And then that's not even taking into account the other 10 swimmers' positioning as well. So, yeah, there's a lot that athletes are going to have to think about, and you have to be so proactive with your placing, with your timing, taking those opportunities. And, you know, we saw Ollie Clement really just kind of take it into his own hands in Ibiza, and I think it's a great example of what can be done when you're really willing to put in the hard work in the 1500 and the 1K, and then you kind of reap the rewards of that on the 500.
That's it. You're almost building the foundations for the house as the race continues on. So we'll see exactly what that means come the final today. I'm sure there'll be a new iteration of that. Great shot seeing both Heat 1 and Heat 2. One thing that I think you've been spot on since the introduction of the knockout, Alice. Is for some athletes in this race, success is just making it through to the semi-final. For some, obviously, it's featuring very high up in the final. But what that means is you have athletes in this field that are just swimming this 1500 meters all out, max effort, with absolutely no intention of swimming deep into the final, and that just creates chaos at the front of the race for our sort of more experienced athletes.
Yeah, exactly. You know, this is the exciting thing about this event is it's short enough that it allows, especially juniors and baby swimmers who just haven't had that, you know, that experience and those endurance hits in a 10K. It gives them that opportunity to get in and, you know, tussle with the likes of, you know, Marc-Antoine Olivier, or in Ibiza, Gregorio Palcineri. Gives them the opportunity to bring it to them, and for example, the Czech Republic swimmer here, whose name I will check in a second. Just a great opportunity to get up there and more experience, and you know, you're swimming on the feet of Dario Varani, you're coping with the pace of David Bethlehem. What great confidence builder this is to take back to your federations, to the World Championships, and then potentially to the 10K, the Olympic event, and draw upon that experience. And thank you, it's a Martin Straka from Czech Republic, so looks like he's having an absolutely great swim here. I'd be really interested to see how he does in the semi-final. By the looks of it, we have a comfortable breakaway here that you can see about 6 swimmers who have definitely like created that space for themselves to move into the semi-final. So fantastic swim from all of them, and especially from the swimmers who maybe didn't feature as well as they wanted to yesterday in the 10K. So yeah, I always love those opportunities that we have more swimmers taking it to the names that we expect.
Yeah, that's it. And great that the sports provided a platform for them to really shine on multiple accounts, not just in the 10 kilometers. As you would have just seen, they swam past that yellow buoy. That will indicate the final straight in the 500 meters. So this is 100 meters into the finish chute, which, I mean, is absolutely crazy to consider that a race is going to be decided over that distance. But you know what? This has been a great showing from Heat 1. As we see, David Bethlehem has been simply sensational from the very first underwater. The good thing in this race, there is absolutely no distance too far to swim underwater, and we've seen that come to fruition once more. David Bethlehem will take the win here. It's a late surge from Dario Varani, but it won't be enough. The Hungarian on top and looking very comfortable on the way through. 17:33 or thereabouts on the touch, as we can see some of the big names coming over the line. Straka, Puskovic, Brandt, Dimicido. Shout out to the Brazilian Sporting Club, as always. Alice really helping us out. How's all the Brazilians in the top 10 really goes to show that federation support, right?
Yes, that is fantastic. Huge congratulations to all of the Brazilians who was there for getting through. This is what I mean. This is what's exciting, you know. Heat 1, whilst it didn't have the big names that we're seeing in Heat 2, great opportunity for countries which have been investing so much time and effort into open water swimming and getting them through to another swim, and more opportunities for such great open water experience. So huge congratulations to them. And we also saw a swimmer from Chinese Taipei get through as well, so huge congratulations to him, and really looking forward to seeing what they can produce in the semi-final too, which is I just want to go on to the gap real quick in between the heat and the semi-final. This is a quick turnaround, ladies and gentlemen. They haven't got long to rest and recover, so they'll be out the water and getting dry.
So for those of you listening at home and wondering how it's fair, the stopwatch doesn't start until the 10th swimmer in Heat 2 touches the scoreboard, so there'll be 10 minutes from that point, so it's an even playing field. There's almost no difference between 10 minutes and 13 minutes of rest. So it's good to see that there's a somewhat even playing field. This is going to be a pretty gnarly finish here. You can see the battle that the French athletes have
Yes.
gone under has opened up that space for Rozovsky and Alice. We're about to see that yellow marker once again that will signify the 500 meter lap. So just keep that in perspective as we see these athletes come down to finish off Heat 2.
Yeah, Rozovsky's really found some good space for himself here. He's not going to let off the gas too much because he wants to carry that momentum into the finish and, you know, not take any chances of someone catching up. But look at the waves he's having to deal with here. This really could, you know, I was going to say it could hinder him quite a lot because having to deal with that by yourself can be so challenging. And it looks like one of the swimmers has managed to find some space. But we see an Italian swimmer off to the side as well. He looks like he's surging through too. So I think this looks comfortable for Rozovsky.
I think
but
that's Philadelphia on the inside.
it's Philadelphia, okay. And
Those are chaos.
it is a lot. This is actually going to be really tight for a lot of the swimmers here.
Yeah.
It looks like we've got roughly 9 or 10 in that front pack, so I think it'll be fairly safe. But again, you can't take anything for granted.
Well, especially, you know, at this point, they're going to be really tactical against who they're sitting next to come the next semi-final start line. And clearly the Hungarians came in with a plan and they've delivered here. There's been a clinical performance down this back straight by Krzysztof Rozovsky. He's going to take out Heat 2 to sweep the heats for the Hungarians. Philadelphia's going to get in second. I believe that's Veli swimming through for third, but it all belongs with Rozovsky. Oh, in fact, it may have been Joey Tepper there. Sorry, Alice. But what a result for Rozovsky ahead of Philadelphia, Tepper, Veli, and then the French with Fontaine, Olivier, and Wallart. Oh, just simply sensational as always. And Kaito Shimori swims through as well.
Yeah, look at all the French names on that. Is wow, yeah, and great from Kaito Shimori for also making it through, and also Takaki as well from Japan. So as I've been hyping up the Brazilians, I'll just hype up the Japanese swimmers as well. As we've been saying, you know, a federation that's been investing so much in giving their swimmers this experience, and the results are definitely paying off. So a great swim from Rozovsky there out in front, had that space. I can't wait to see how Rozovsky and Bethlehem react to each other in this semi-final. We haven't got to wait too long, but I'm sorry, do you know what time Rozovsky finished in? I missed it. I was getting too excited about the French and
sorry, I
Japanese.
missed it as well. We'll get the confirmation
Okay,
shortly.
well, yeah.
But I don't know if it was as fast.
I don't think it was, but we'll get confirmation shortly. But you know, David Bethlehem did look like he was like surging through there with that underwater, and his turns were very clean as well. So, and I feel like Rozovsky had a lot of wave to deal with there. That back straight, it looked like the water was much more disturbed than Heat 1.
Well, you could see at the end of the women's race yesterday, these athletes were getting pushed from the finish arch into the pontoon, and today there's actually a bit of a current going against them, so that will certainly play an impact when we get to the final 500 meters and you see different athletes lining up in different positions. But for now, that is Heat 1 and Heat 2 done. We'll get confirmation on who will be our semi-finalists. There, to your point, Alice, about the different times, there wasn't the significant gap that we saw in Ibiza, where it was about a minute and a half between the speed of Heat 1 and the speed of Heat 2. So ultimately, what's happened in that race is Heat 2 came away with almost the entire podium. So we'll see exactly what it means for these athletes as they develop. But here is the results from Heat 1. As we saw, David Bethlehem, 17:32 across the line. It was a very strong swim from the Hungarian.
Yeah, fantastic. And you know, you can see him kind of like ever so slightly turning off in the finish there. But we really always love how athletes react afterwards with their like recovery, their prep. I think with the water being 18.5 degrees, you got to get out and get warm. Yeah, the air temperature will be fairly warm-ish, but you know, get dry, get some rest, sit down. And then I always think you need to start moving a little bit, but it'll be interesting to see if any athletes do start doing that, especially just that walk out, getting your limbs moving and shaking it all off.
Well, we saw that in Ibiza as well, where Oli Clement was straight up the sort of runway back to his coach, with the jumper on and the massage gun out, I believe, getting him ready for and trying to flush out any sort of lactate. So we see some of these athletes sitting quite still at the moment. I'm sure they'll get up in a couple minutes. We're probably about 6 minutes away from the start of the next heat. As you mentioned, a Chinese Taipei athlete finishing in 10th position there. That is Cheng Ching Cho of Chinese Taipei. He has been prolific this year in the relay. We'll get back to him in a second as we look at the Heat 2 results. Rosowski on top all the way through to Takaki of Japan. As you can see, 20 seconds slower than Heat 1. I don't think you can read too much into that. Almost put that wholeheartedly down to that sort of first 50 meters that we saw from Bethlehem. I think we're going to get a look back at that shortly, but not a sizable gap. In fact, oh no, we are looking back at the highlights. Sorry, I thought the athletes were just relaxing in the water. Here we go. Look at that underwater. Actually, Alice, I think that was further than 15 meters.
Yeah, it was bad. It just kind of kept going. And do you know what was most? Oh my gosh, was that Rosowski at the start?
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, okay. On David Bethlehem's underwater, firstly, he just kept going. I kept thinking, oh, okay, he's going to pop up now. But again, his awareness that I think he knew that he'd cleared everybody with his feet and with his head. I don't know how he knew, because it's really difficult to tell something like that underwater in open water. But he just knew and had that awareness that this is enough clearance. I'm going to come up now and start turning over my arms. And also, I just want to say quickly on Rosowski, it looks like he dived in late, like as in everybody went, he kind of rebounded on the starting pontoon and then he dived in. So to still find that space and that speed to get in front how he did was really, really impressive.
That's so true, Alice. I think, it's going to be interesting to see exactly what that means between the two heats. As you see Rosowski move through the finish line there with intention and out and up on the pontoon, looking to get into his recovery as quickly as possible. So this is...
Sorry, do you know what I love? Sorry. I love the two very different approaches from Bethlehem and Rosowski. You have Bethlehem, who's doing a pull start, like take your marks, go pull start, and Rosowski, who's like literally waiting for everybody else to dive in and then diving in after them. I wonder if they're going to, if Rosowski will do the same thing on the semi-final start line. Sorry, I couldn't hold that thought.
No, I actually just went back and looked it up, and Rosowski, he didn't even just get the reverb of the start. He actually waited and moved across the starting pontoon to get on the inside of the course. So an old school move there. We usually see that for the 10K, where Ferry Vertman would wait until the sort of 7K mark to even move through the field. But that's what he did for the 1500. Geez, it would be nice to be able to have that pace, right?
Yeah. Wow. Just the caliber of people he was dealing with in Heat 2 as well. I guess maybe he trusted that he didn't have David Bethlehem or Ollie Clement in swimming in his heat, that he knows the pace isn't going to be crazy hot, if you know what I mean. I'd be fascinated to see if he does this now with David being next to him, knowing that he's going to be gunning for it.
Yeah, well, so what you'll see is the Hungarians heading to the far side of the pontoon. Krzysztof Rosowski will have the outside lane, given that he won heat number 2. And then we have David Bethlehem on the inside of him. So we see some of the other athletes walking down now. Joey Tepper in there alongside Dario Varani. This is a bit different to what we usually see. I'm not quite sure why they're not lining up alongside the Hungarians there, Alice.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, are they not going to be forced to move down, or are they getting to choose where they want to stand?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Interesting.
Yeah, we'll see how this plays out. As Dylan Bradley just absolutely stoked to be into the semi-final. And this is an athlete that loves racing, so good on the finish line as well. So we'll keep an eye on the young American as he develops through this race. But we've got all eyes on that start line. They are starting to bunch up a bit more, but still not that pressure that I was expecting on the Hungarians. Here is a big threat to those athletes in Marc-Antoine Olivier, looking very comfortable with where he has to do. or where he has to go to do what he has to do in this semi-final.
Yeah, I'm fascinated that nobody's kind of like, hey, we need to crowd round the Hungarian swimmers. We like this is really interesting. This is not the approach I personally would take if I was these men, especially when Logan Fontaine gets on the line. I'd be interested to see how this works.
Next to David there?
You know what? It makes sense. It would make so much sense if that is him. He's not in the frame.
23 is definitely Marc Antoine. I think it was 35 standing next to. Yes, that doesn't look like Marc.
No, I don't think that's him. No, he hasn't got the beard.
No, that's Jules
but either
Wallart,
way,
sorry.
it's Wallart. Okay, he was very good in Heat 2. So yes, it's very interesting. You're seeing some swimmers moving down now. Yeah, and that's another French swimmer sandwiching the Hungarians. Here you go. This yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so I think we just have to get some clarification on this. Previously, it was definitely your position in your heat then dictated where you stand on the starting line. That's not the case here, as we can see. Oh no, Dario Varani and Logan Fontaine next to each other on the far side of the course to David Bethlehem. Once again, Alice, we are moments away from the start of this semi-final. We keep our eyes for across in the jammers, the green hat of the Hungarian that is David Bethlehem. He has been simply sensational at this point in the race. Every time he's dived in so far, we will see if there is a reaction. The horn is ready, the flag is up, and Bethlehem is down. And we are underway here in the semi-final. Watch the distance. There are some boys trying to go with him, but that is a huge start once more. But equally so, Wallart right on the hip of Bethlehem, and that would absolutely hurt.
There's tactics going on here, isn't there? I know that the start line is meant to be based off of the heats, and but it doesn't appear that happened. I think the swimmers took this into their own hands and shifted around a little bit, because you are seeing direct tactics of these two French swimmers jumping onto the hips of of David Bethlehem instantly, and not allowing him to get that great advantage that he got. And on the far side of the course, I know it's Dario Varani, I believe Logan Fontaine next to each other, and it's opened up a great opportunity for them to kind of dictate the pace of the race at the moment.
Yeah, it's gonna this is where it does get tricky. Bethlehem, where he has such a great high cadence, can really move through the field quickly, but with athletes knowing exactly where he is and almost game racing against him, I mean, he can thank Ollie Clement for this after Clement really sort of solidified what the intentions were from these athletes. If you remember back to Ibiza, Bethlehem and Clement working together to get the best positions into the final. I guess the good thing for these athletes is they really only need to focus on being in the top 10 to make their way through. But I mean, as you look across here, even that is 10 meters wide of this turn can, and that's 10 meters that Bethlehem's going to have to make up over Philadelphia and Logan Fontaine.
Yes, that's such a good point. And you know, I'm just thinking, looking forward to Singapore. I think off the back of this, there potentially might be some complaints in terms of making sure that athletes stay where they were meant to stay and stand. So I think in Singapore we'll probably have you finished in this position, you stand in this position, you start in this position. So anyway, just makes it really exciting view for us. And you can see David Bethlehem on the far right hand side of the course at the moment. But I don't know who the Frenchman is. I'm not sure if it was Logan Fontaine who that might be leading out in front, but he's got some really good water, and we do see David Bethlehem having his own water now, but I feel like his rhythm and cadence was really kind of taken away from him, having to deal with the sandwich that he was in at the very start of the race.
Yeah, that's it. But I mean, as we speak about often on broadcast, Alice, it's not necessarily you have to be a goldfish in open water swimming, as we say. You can't let
Yes.
things wear you down. And what Bethlehem is so famous for is what he's doing right now, where he's saying, I'm going to swim a further distance, but I'm going to swim it faster than you. So you can either swim out in my own water, or you can swim on the straight line and not be able to sit on my feet. And it takes a very highly skilled athlete to be able to do that, and that's what he's doing, is just saying, I'm not too bothered about swimming exactly 1,000 meters, but I am going to swim in my own water, and you're not going to take that away from me.
Yeah, and so we're just getting some information on the rules at the moment. And for semi-finals and finals, qualified swimmers choose their location within the limited start area on the pontoon based on their rankings on the previous round. So what I'm understanding from that is you can actually choose where you stand, and this rule is going to play. It's already, I mean, we've already seen what it's done to a swimmer like David Bethlehem, and like you said, just being a goldfish and being able to just cope with whatever it's thrown at you. At the end of the day, it is an open water swim. David Bethlehem is a very seasoned and very professional open water swimmer. He'll be able to cope with some swimmers, knowing that he's going to be the target guy in terms of dictating the pace of the race. He's still swimming very much to his own race at the moment, and really working hard to climb this up. But you can see this cluster of Italian swimmers. I still haven't got confirmation of it, but I think it might be Logan Fontaine who was out in front.
Yeah, that was Fontaine alongside Philadelphia on his feet, Dario Virani, and it was actually Kaito Shimori of Japan on the inside. But you can still see those very specific lines being set at the moment by our lead athletes. Bethlehem is going to almost take the lead, though, at this point in the race. And this is where open water swimming does get really tricky. You speak to the awareness, and it's very easy when you're at the front of the race to know what's going on. But as we've seen here by Logan Fontaine, a deliberate move to try and bridge the gap across to Bethlehem. But I think what Bethlehem will do is just keep going wider until he does have to cut back across the course. And this is where it gets exciting. 1,000 meters before the 500 meter final. And these athletes are absolutely hammering down this course.
Yeah, definitely. You know, there are so many good athletes within this field that you can really see that you can kind of see roughly where the 10th position will be, and that there's like about 4 or 5 people in line jostling for that place. So, I mean, even the ones at the front, your position is really not secure, because there'll only be about 4 or 5 seconds between first and 10th. So there's no room for error here. You really have to make sure these turns are tight and you're utilising every stroke possible. And here's where we see David Bethlehem really coming up now. And I'm just thinking, imagine if he didn't have that hindrance at the start with having 2 people sat like right on his hip. He's really flying through now.
I mean, to be fair, Alice, this is exactly what we wanted to see out of the knockout, is that hard, fast racing. This is very tactical. The athletes know when and where they're going to have to put effort on, and even at this position, whilst Bethlehem has got his own water, he's on the outside of the course, which means he still has to swim a longer distance than our athletes sitting in the middle, and that's where this big surge has come from coming into this turn can. All this effort is going to be expelled in this heat, knowing that there still is another 500 meter final coming up afterwards. So, I mean, it's a smart move from the French, but it's definitely going to challenge the way that the race continues to develop.
That's so true. Yeah, I mean, you still need to focus on your own race at the end of the day, and this is the tough thing with open water swimming. Like, you can kind of have all your tactics based around other people, but at the end of the day, if they've got that speed, they've got that speed. And look, like after all of that, David Bethlehem is still out in front. He has nobody touching his feet. He had a fantastic turn there. Really, really good. Found his own space, found his own water. And this is what I keep saying about playing to your strengths. Try not to worry about what other people are doing too much. Focus on what you can control. He played to his strengths with his underwater, found that clear water, got round the outside, and is now back in front exactly where he wants to be, dictated the pace of the race once again.
So we'll watch once more as he comes down very shortly to make his way onto the home straight. This, of course, being the 1,000-meter semi-final. Bethlehem now in control after having to do all the hard work. And one thing I will note here, Alice, is he's dragged his teammate and countryman in Krzysztof Rosowski all the way forward with him. And we've got another showdown between Fontaine and Rosowski as they come down to this turn and head down the 350 meters straight. This, of course, a reminder to all of the spectators, a normal lap for a 10 kilometers is 1,666 meters long. So we are significantly shorter than that, and what that does is put pressure on each and every tactical move, including these also important turns. One thing that we'll keep in mind as well, the current is starting to pick up once more. So Bethlehem just snuck on the inside of the can, having to push out across. That's going to put a massive, massive angle on the course. That's a great shot of just how much that's going to impact, you know, the 12th to 15th athletes. Oh, that is a gnarly angle that they've had to endure there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it looks like a shrimp or a prawn almost, like just absolutely having to curve around so much. And yeah, those are those moments where if you are on the outside, you can end up like giving everyone too much space, and you just keep swimming further and further out, and then you have to overcorrect and come back. So it's one of those things where the 3K knockout really draws on all of the knowledge and experience that athletes have gained throughout the 10Ks and kind of compartmentalizes it into a very compact race and forces you to be correct in the moment as much as possible. There's literally no room for error. There's very little room for error in a 10K, but with these 3K knockout rounds, there's virtually no room at all.
I mean, we'll see what that means for the final, because that could be the difference. That's all extra meters, you know, Alice. That is essentially inefficient swimming, unfortunately, and it's at no fault of their own. As we see the front of this semi-final, Logan Fontaine starting to pull up alongside David Bethlehem. He's about one stroke off the hip of Bethlehem, and that will be the world of difference for the Hungarian. You can see Bethlehem trying to push towards the outside of the course, back towards the shore, just making Fontaine do some extra work. Really no major worries between those two at this stage. Rosowski just letting Fontaine move forward, opening the door to, I believe, Joey Tepper, who's starting to charge through for the USA. Some big names in consideration here. There was a star-studded top 20 moving through, so there's going to be some names missing out. Marc-Antoine moving through now. Anyone of great concern there, Alice?
No, I'm just drawing back to the European Championship results, which was only a couple of weeks ago. So we had Krzysztof Rosowski finishing first, Logan Fontaine finishing second, and David Bethlehem finishing third. So I actually feel like we're getting a repeat of that moment now. And just a big shout out to Joey Tepper once again. He's having like a really fantastic season, and he's really, you know, giving us Europeans, you know, some something to worry about here, because I feel like it can be often a European-dominated sport. So, you know, with any injections from like South Americans, Asians, as we know, the Oceania content are putting out some amazing athletes, and now as we see from North America too. So, I don't know where Marc-Antoine Olivier is. You know, he finished, I believe, third in Ibiza in this race. I'm sure he might be somewhere safe-ish back there, but it's so hard to tell with, you know, so many strong Italian swimmers, and of course Kaito Tsushimori of Japan too. So there's, I am worried about quite a few swimmers back there, because it's really hard to tell. It looks like there's about 10 to 12 swimmers that could comfortably be touching the pad in the next few moments.
Yeah, and here we are in the finish line. The battle currently sitting with Logan Fontaine ahead of David Bethlehem. Krzysztof Rosowski on the left side of your screen pushing through. That will be the top three. I think that might even be the US cap in fourth, but Fontaine gets the win ahead of Bethlehem. Rosowski in third. Marc-Antoine's through comfortably. I think that was Dylan Gravely. It was, in fact, Barani across the line. So big names included Wallart, Philadelphia, Melechi of Brazil through. And, two Brazilians across in the top 10, Alice. That's a huge result. Sasha Veli missing out after such a strong 10K, as well as Straka, Puskovic, Shimori. So some big names missing out of that top 10. And wow, obviously wait for the ratified results, but that's huge.
Yeah, and apologies to Dylan Gravely for confusing him with his countryman there, but huge congratulations to him for a fourth place finish. But just again for the Brazilian team, amazing. You know, they got 4 swimmers into the semi-final, and then now 2 into the final. Malechi, this is what I'm talking about with the experience that you give to juniors. Absolutely fantastic. Look at how it's paying off for them. And as you saw, Sasha Veli just missing out as well after coming second yesterday, you know. And this is what we're talking about with the 10K and the potential emotional toll, definitely the physical toll that's there. And, you know, he shouldn't come away from this weekend with any disappointment in his heart at all, you know. It's such a tough race, these 3K knockout rounds. And like I said, if you make a slight mistake, if you're on the wrong line, all of a sudden, all of that effort that you've put in for the remaining 900 meters. Just see Joey Tepper there giving himself a round of applause. But huge congratulations to him. And he had a great race back in Ibiza, and looking forward to seeing him in Singapore in a few weeks' time. But just back to a case like Sasha Veli, where we don't know what happened to him to cause him to come into 11th place. Would expect him to finish higher, but at the same time, great second place finish yesterday, and should be coming away very happy from this weekend.
Well, it speaks to just how pivotal the skills are in this race. That finish line was absolute chaos, and the Brazilians had 4 of their own country through in Heat 1 to the semi-final, and you clearly see, as you speak about the skills and the depth of nations really leading to further results. As we see there, Fontaine 11:36.1 gets it done ahead of Bethlehem, and Gravely, in fact, ahead of Rozovsky, it looks like at this stage. So big result in that top 10, and some huge names ready to race here in this final. Oh, Alice, I mean, probably about 6 minutes away from starting the final. Who is your prediction?
I think if David Bethlehem gets his own clear water off the start, I think it's his. My issue is if he gets held back in any way, he's only going to have maybe 300 meters of space to correct this. Whereas with the 1K, as we saw, he had time to sort it out, and it didn't really he didn't get in front until maybe 500 or 450 meters into the finish. So that is not enough time in the 500 meters to sort that out. And, you know, we've got all of these French guys in there who are probably looking to kind of rinse and repeat what they did, going to stand next to him, and Rozovsky as well. So, yeah, well, I interested to see. It honestly depends on how these men decide to start.
Yeah. As we look back to the highlights here of the semi-final, I think a key thing to note is what you specified earlier. For the semi-finals and finals, the qualified swimmers will choose their own location within the starting area on the pontoon. And what we saw was Christoph and David go to the very far end of the start line, and what we saw on the contrary was Logan Fontaine go on the inside of the course, and ultimately Logan was best set up. So I guess, Alice, with that in mind, do you think we'll see a reaction from Bethlehem to be on the inside, knowing that, of course, he'll most likely be popping up next to Logan Fontaine?
Yeah, I don't know, I guess the benefit now is that David Bethlehem knows that people are going to be targeting him, right? So it's how does he kind of use that to his advantage, use that knowledge to his advantage, and try and flip it on its head. So I don't know if taking the outside line here is going to be beneficial, because if you do have swimmers just come and target you anyway, what's the point? We are dealing with a much smaller field, aren't we? So it's only 10 people, much smaller, much less bodies to deal with. I don't know, and I'm just kind of drawing back on what Ollie Clement said in his interview before. I'm wondering whether people have now realised that the rule is they can stand wherever they want, because it seemed like in Ibiza they were following we line up on the start line like this.
Yeah.
But I think the indication from athletes now, and as we have had the rules ratified to ourselves, is that you can stand where you want, and I think the athletes know that. So it's changed the dynamic of winning the heats and the semi-final.
And so we get to see that play out here. Dario Varani introduced after Christoph Rozovsky. Logan Fontaine is already on the pontoon, as is David Bethlehem. Where are they standing? Are they next to each other? We'll see very shortly. Marc-Antoine introduce the winner, of course, from yesterday, the series winner from 2024, and currently the leader of the men's tour as well. You can see Logan Fontaine is at one end, David Bethlehem has gone to the other, and Dylan Gravely has followed Bethlehem all the way down. Bethlehem has gone all the way as far as possible away from the field, and it looks like Christoph has followed him. This is tantalizing stuff, Alice.
Yes, this is the tactics that we're talking about. So what David Bethlehem is doing here is saying, hey, if you're fast enough to swim with me, come and swim with me. I am going to swim further. He's probably, I imagine he's probably saying, I'm going to swim maybe 5 to 10 meters further, because it looks like it's going to be quite far off the race line. And it's one of those things that if you can keep up with me, great. If not, this isn't for you. So be interesting to see which swimmers back themselves to go next to him. And yeah, I think we see Marc-Antoine saying, I'll give it a go. Let's see what we can do with this speed.
This is deadly by the field, giving David his own space. That's I'm not sure I'd do that.
Me either, yeah, no, I don't know. We'll interesting what the final French swimmer decides to do.
So that's Sasha Velli. He's actually made it through into the final.
Yes, yeah, I saw that one of the Brazilian swimmers and Sasha Velli were swapped, I believe, in the results. So,
wow.
Photo finish.
Here we go, moments away from the start, 500 meters, an absolute splash and dash for these open water swimmers. We see the incredible officials getting ready to start this race. On the very far left of your screen is David Bethlehem, green hat, jammers on, down in the dive position. You can see some of the athletes like Jules Wallach copying that tactic now. We'll keep an eye on the underwater work of the Hungarian as we are underway. A great start there from David Bethlehem, and he's really working those underwaters, and you can see why Rozovsky tried to do it as well, but he's come up with a field. And look at the weight coming off the young Hungarian on the left of your screen, Alice. He is putting that outboard to work.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's smart from Marc-Antoine to kind of back that horse and see what he can do, because I think just the cluster of people that were surrounding Rozovsky and like Logan Fontaine is the kind of thing where you're just like, I'm going to be fighting for like third position here, whereas with David Bethlehem, if I back myself, I know that I can be in a comfortable second behind him and then see what I can work with further around the course. So, and you know he's going to have the speed, you know he's got that great underwater, and he's going to find that space for himself. So it's also interesting as well, one of the Italians, I'm not sure which one it is, apologies, it was waited a bit, dived in, and then cut back over. So so many different tactics and things coming out, and now you see Marc-Antoine actually hopping over to go in the middle between Rozovsky and David Bethlehem. I think he's just being a little bit indecisive about what he wants, but it might be because David Bethlehem and Rozovsky are now like sandwiching back together. So there's and then you've got so many French caps in this, and the Italians, and Dylan Gravely sat in there.
Oh no, Wallart's lost his goggles. Oh, that is devastating. That is not what you want for the 500 meter final. You can see it's already impacting him, but we keep the race at the front. This is a veteran move from Rozovsky. He takes the lead. Watch, I think Bethlehem's going to want to get on the inside of him here. He will know that he's not going to be able to move Rozovsky around as he has done with the rest of the field, and almost wouldn't even back himself to go down this 100 meter straight. This is going to be an all-out sprint here. It's very interesting to note that 100 meters, because often with these long straights, Alice, we have our athletes surging in and out of the turn cans, but with 100 meters, there's no time to surge.
No, that's so true. You know, this is basically just a drag race. You know, you have to put all of your speed down at every point as much as possible. When you're getting to these turns, you don't want to have to decelerate too much. So coming around this turn is going to be very interesting to see if either of these swimmers in Rozovsky or Bethlehem can get like a little nudge up on the other swimmer, so they have their right of way first as they go around the buoy. It looks like it's Rozovsky at the moment, but I think they're basically stroke for stroke, and it's going to be so, like, as this kind of door closes and they have to snap back together to come around the buoy, it's going to be an absolutely crucial moment to deciding the winner of the race.
Well, we're yet to see a World Cup where the winner of the first straight doesn't go on to win the 500 meter knockout, and at this point that was Krzysztof Rozovsky. He is certainly in the driver's seat. He has, I believe that's Logan Fontaine on his feet. Sitting alongside him is his countryman and teammate and David Bethlehem. Behind Bethlehem is Marc-Antoine Olivier. They've both been the beneficiaries of Jules Wallout sort of falling behind the pace. Philadelphia and Varani in the mix as well. That was a great turn by Rozovsky. He's pulled half a body length lead ahead of Bethlehem. Bethlehem battling hard. Remember, another 150 meters here before the next turn, and you can see Bethlehem choosing to sit on the feet and trying to get the inside line on this can here.
Yeah, this is where you really have to take those opportunities, and look how quickly they're shifting already to that next turn, boy. And Bethlehem's kind of said, I have to take this line. It's one of those things where he could like settle in behind Rozovsky and potentially settle for second, but he has to take this line if he wants to try and get in first place. And it looks like we're going to have a bit of a top four breakaway, so someone's going to be a bit disappointed.
Yeah, this is so interesting here. So what we've seen, you can't get the best line, but essentially Rozovsky's come way inside the course because he knows Bethlehem's trying to get the inside line onto the can, but what it's done is open the door here for Marc-Antoine to swim up onto the hip of Rozovsky, and that's going to pull him back into the field and ultimately open the door for Logan as well. So all four of these athletes well and truly within the race now. Marc-Antoine looks simply sensational, as he said yesterday, Alice, getting ready for the French Nationals, and here comes Logan Fontaine on the inside. Watch this turn, this is going to be chaos.
Okay, so this is really interesting. You kind of have two different ways of swimming here. You've got Marc-Antoine and David Bethlehem, who are slighter, leaner athletes, and then you have Rozovsky and Logan Fontaine, who are bulkier and stronger athletes. And it's kind of like who's going to come out on top here. But again, this is quite similar to what we saw in Ibiza in the 10K at the end. Look at how it has opened the door for the rest of the field to get back in. Initially, halfway through the straight, we had a good gap between fourth place and fifth place, but now all of a sudden it has opened the door for everybody else to crowd around this boy. And I wouldn't surprise me if we start to see an Italian come through here. It's really opened that opportunity up for everybody else in the field to make it a fair game.
Yeah, this is complete chaos here, Alice. As we can see, all four athletes wanting to swim in their own water now. There's 100 meters to the turn, from the turn to the finish. This is anyone's race, and you can see Fontaine pushing across to Marc-Antoine, Rozovsky trying to move, and here is David Bethlehem just deciding to swim in his own water down this final straight. Oh my goodness, as they get ready for the finish arch. We have Bethlehem on the top of your screen, the two French in Fontaine and Marc-Antoine battling together. Looks like Bethlehem's got the better of the water, and he's managed to just open some separation. A late surge from Fontaine, jumping across to the hip of Bethlehem. It's not going to be enough though. It will be David Bethlehem. 6:12 across, and he throws the shuckers to take the victory. What an incredible performance from the young Hungarian.
Wow. I mean, just taking him, we have Rozovsky lead. Rozovsky has such a fantastic turn going across that kind of the second last turn, boy. I was kind of like, okay, this is really locked in for him, and then for him to finish outside of the medals just shows how dynamic and challenging this race is, and you really have to be making things happen at the right place, the right time, using your opportunities. And I think we saw Logan Fontaine finish in second and Marc-Antoine Olivier finish in third. What a weekend for Marc-Antoine Olivier on the podium twice again. Wow.
Mr. Consistent, as you say.
Yes. But yeah, huge congratulations to David Bethlehem. Coming second in Ibiza to Ollie Clement, but this was a very different race. This was a very different 500 to that.
That was crazy. And sorry for jumping over each other there on that finish line, but that final turn was so interesting because the way that Rozovsky was handling it was almost defensive, as opposed to the way that we saw Ollie Clement race this, which was a very attacking mode of racing. And what that did is, as you said, Alice, open the door up to a number of names and ultimately a 100-meter straight sprint. As soon as Bethlehem was able to get away into his own water, there was no stopping him. He jumped a full body length, and I think that is very, very crucial, not only for Bethlehem, but for some of the Germans that are maybe watching along at the moment, to say, if we can get clean water, we have a shot at gold. And I don't know what the reaction is going to be, but that was huge as he now talks to Bettina Fabian, who's about to take her own spot in this race.
Yeah, this is what I love, getting those shots, seeing the athletes pass on that information, this is what worked for me, take that opportunity, use this, use that. It's really valuable information. I've had it so many times before with the 10K when the boys have gotten out and I've been like, give me some information, and they're like, they say this, this, and this, and I'm like, okay. And you get in and you see how that plays out, and it's really useful. So Bettina Fabian she is also European champion, so in the 3K knockout, and she also swam fantastically in Ibiza, finishing, I believe, in second or third place. I think it was second place behind Leah Boy because she finished third in the 10K.
Yeah.
And she was the only swimmer to podium twice that weekend, so really excited to see what the women come up with. Oh, and sorry, just going back to the men as well. I'm feeling for Rozovsky here, from European champion a couple of weeks back, and to finishing in fourth place. It is tough, but it's all practice and experience for Singapore, which is coming up very soon.
Well, on that, Alice, Bethlehem looked absolutely stoked after that race. He was, he was so happy, throwing the shekers after the race as well, as we get to watch back some of the highlights from this final. How does a swim like that and winning in sort of trying conditions really boost some of these athletes' confidence ahead of Singapore?
I mean, one thing that we want to point out is this is 18.5 degrees water.
Yeah.
So, for a swimmer like David Bethlehem, who is on the leaner side, he races without the top half. It'll be quite cold for him. So I'm just thinking, if you can get some confidence with this from winning in quite cold water, in very tiring conditions, with the 10K yesterday, whilst everybody did compete in the 10K, still just holding that fatigue in you and still get that win over a very strong field, over all of the athletes that also competed at the European Championships as well. Just the confidence that this is going to build moving into Singapore is really exciting. But then, you throw into the mix Oliver Clement and Florian Wellbrock. Where does that leave the field? What does that do to it? How will people react to that? And even in terms of the start line, I love the tactics of the start line. That was so interesting to watch.
Yeah, and it just speaks to, imagine seeing this at the World Champs in a couple months.
Yes.
We're going to have...
I'm so excited.
There is going to be... We have so much depth at every federation, but we're going to see the best of the best taking to the water just to make it through to the semi-final is going to be absolutely insane. And then we get to see it once more, just 10 athletes ripping around this course. That 500-meter distance goes by in a blink of an eye. And even if you look at this course here, and I know I've reiterated on the distances, it is so foreign to some of these athletes that the course may end quickly. Speaking of, we'll be back in action for the women's race very shortly. Stay tuned for all the action here with World Aquatics.